Hey, just a little reminder. This is a horror podcast, so there will be content warnings in the description, especially for this particular episode. There's a lot of nasty stuff going on. So, before you listen, check those out, make sure you're good, and I'll see you in the episode. Alright, welcome back to this podcast, Random Prompt Stories. This is the first installment of supplemental episodes. So this would be supplemental episode 1, which is our Halloween special, Creatures of Blood. So, um, if you recall, these are not made by the random prompts, so it will be like a completely different extension of this podcast. Just a short story that I've written before, and then I want to read on here now. So, here it is, Creatures of Blood. There are several reasons why I should write down this experience. There are, however, several more that tell me not to. But if I do not spit in the eye of fate now, eventually it might be too far into the future even to do something this futile, as it would only hasten the end. When I remember that day, what seems like ages ago in my memory, I can't help but remember a passage from an old book, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, maybe? It goes, "In the viscous continuum of life, any imbalance is eventually corrected by the same carnal energy that created it." Well, maybe it wasn't Frankenstein. But still, that sourceless quote arises in my mind every time my nightmares pull me back to those moments that I wish I could just forget. To be fair, I do forget about them most of the time, but alcohol and other indulgences can only wash them away for so long. Not forever. I've given up on that. My therapist came up with the idea of writing down what my nightmares show me. Bless her heart, she has the best intentions, but even then cannot begin to accept that my nightmares are rooted in memory. I don't blame her. Sometimes I even believe her. Still, I've been keeping away from writing, because then it stops being only in my head. I didn't want to record my experiences to keep them from taking physical form, even if only as words on a page. But, unfortunately, the recurring suicide attempts have pushed her to threaten to commit me, tuck me away in a little asylum where I'll be safe and sedated. So, reluctantly, I'll begin writing. This event didn't occur in a vacuum. The company I worked for had dealt with similar sorts of phenomena in the past, though I only hear of them as stories told before my time. Nothing of this nature has happened even relatively recently, and so when we got the call to action, we knew it wasn't going to be exactly like before. I can't write about my specific occupation. It's not that I have a contract forbidding me or anything. The company wiped my mind before I even contacted the phenomena. It's policy, I'm sure, trying to keep any relevant information out of spy networks or the public eye. All I was left with was my directive and training. The first place we went to was pretty inconspicuous. A small rural town in the Midwest. The place had piqued the interest of my company because it ceased its factory operations. Most of the people living there were farmers, or at least that's how it was once we got there. See, the closing of a factory seems like an ordinary thing, but it can also be the first sign of infection. We get sent to every town that closes a factory or shuts down industrial centers, but it's rare that we're ever actually needed. It only matters once, the 1 in 1,000 chance that this is the result of something greater. This time, however, our ambassadors to the town, our inspectors, had stopped responding. Considering that even a signal of their vital signs, which are monitored by the company, are treated as responses, this did not bode well. Before we even arrived, we blockaded all the roads. We made sure that everyone from town was within a 5-mile radius, which proved to not be too difficult, as there was a harvest festival of some sort happening. When myself and a few other ambassadors arrived, the festival was already in full swing. People were dancing, talking, drinking, anything that you might find at any other small town event. However, one thing stood out as an indication that something more was going on. A truck full of produce sat in the center of the crowd, getting ready to sell the town's produce to stores all over the Midwest. It was innocent enough, except for one thing. The person driving, or rather the appearance of the person driving, was one of the previous ambassadors that had gone silent a few days prior. We decided to mingle for a while, trying to fit in and find out who, or what, the driver was. The story remained blatantly consistent. He had come here as a factory inspector, but had given up on that life to work on the local farms. After a while of conversing, though, we started getting odd looks from others in the crowd. Receiving orders from my earpiece, I zeroed in on the driver. He watched me as I approached, and even though I kept up the facade of being friendly, I knew he, or it, suspected what I was there for. In something that might have been panic, rage, or stupidity, the creature opened the car door and walked to confront me. At first, it kept the veneer of being a suspicious, small-town man, but after I drew my weapon, all formalities dropped. The weapon in question looked like no more than a small disc the size of my palm, with wires wrapped in a coil within the clear plastic. To anything else, it might be a curiosity, but little else. To this thing, however, its purpose was clear. The body's eyeballs popped. Its skin bubbled. Blood began to seep from its pores and rupture through any orifice it could. I heard the cracking of bone, muscles shattering the skeleton into shards that could launch from the body as a defense. I knew on instinct how these things operated and followed my training. I gave the disc a twist to the right and tossed it into the twisted sculpture of flesh and blood. Arcs of electricity began to connect to the body, vaporizing the blood and leaving a smoky iron scent in the air. The flesh convulsed, this time involuntarily, and started to fry. I had seen this in action before, so I quickly turned from the burning body to signal the rest of the crew. We began to attack the crowd. Some chose to try and fight, like the other one did. Others tried to keep up their facade in hopes of pleading or escaping unnoticed. Perhaps some of them had not even been fully infected. It didn't matter. Not one survived. After the backup forces had come through with their flamethrowers and scorched earth, it was time to face the old factory. We had confirmation of an infection, so we were all suited up in body armor and respiration masks to find the rest of it. I was one of the squad leaders, and we split off to take the front and back. Each squad was outfitted with the captain, strike team, and a cauterizer equipped with a flamethrower. My squad cracked glow sticks and descended into the basement, while the backdoor team took the upper floors. The factory was much more run down than we had anticipated. At least, that's what I tell myself when I try to think of the reason I fell. Maybe there were some rotted floorboards we hadn't noticed, and I had stepped on them and fell through. Surely I had just stepped on the wrong place at the wrong time, and that compulsion I seem to remember was a result of the later concussion, right? Even if the contagion could have gotten through my mask, emotional manipulation is something we've never seen before in these things. If it was capable of adaptation. In any case, I don't think I'll ever know. Any squad member that saw what happened is inaccessible now, still working for the company that I can no longer remember. What occurred next is the part that sticks in my mind, the part that I remember whenever my drug or alcohol supply runs dry. I remember falling very clearly, falling for a while. I don't remember landing. I woke up in a shallow pool, my legs very mangled and painful to shift. Of course, my company-sanctioned pain inhibitors muffled the screaming of shattered nerves, but I could still feel a lot of it. After the fog, what I later learned was a concussion had cleared somewhat. I looked around the cavern I was in, my glow stick still in my hand and lighting the space. The liquid I was in, what I had assumed to be water, was deep red. Even through my mask I could smell it. Blood, and lots of it. Panic surged in my chest, and I activated my distress beacon. At the device's activation, I felt a stirring around me. The liquid was moving. The currents began to churn, picking up speed as they formed into a whirlpool centered around me. My broken, crumpled legs began to lift with the flow, which made my vision go white. Even with the painkillers, the feeling of bone being torn out was sharp and impossible to suppress. I think I remember screaming, but eventually I must have blacked out in pain. My squad found me, the distress beacon still active, washed out into a nearby stream. I was covered in blood and bone shards, barely alive. They had searched the basement for me and found nothing but an empty pit. No trace of a pool of blood was included in the official report. After I was rehabilitated, as much as I could be with no legs. The company discharged me with the incident report as their reason. My implants were deactivated and I was given my retirement check. Over the past few years, I've been in and out of mental hospitals, in and out of therapy, and in and out of bars. No one would believe me if the story got out, and that's not what I'm worried about. No, the thing that worries me the most is that the experience has not lessened its hold on me. Even after writing, this trauma has not been resolved. I was keeping from writing because I knew it wouldn't help. Nothing will. Whether by someone's hand or my own, the only way I can be released is to disappear from this viscous continuum of life. That thing is still out there. It was in that pit, and was able to use me to escape. Perhaps that is why I'm still alive. But no matter how much Earth is scorched, it will find a way to infect everyone, and I do not intend to be here when it does. Alright. So, that was, again, the first supplemental episode. Um, and yeah, so Halloween special, everyone. Woo, big spooky. I hope that wasn't too gory for anyone. There will be content warnings. I'll probably put a warning at the start saying like content warnings are in the description. And I'll also put the document in the description as well. So I hope you enjoyed. Hope it wasn't too much. And I will see you in the next episode. Goodbye.